In 1931, a frail, pale woman with dyed blonde hair lay on a bed in a dingy, low-budget room. Her appearance was a fitting reflection of Mary Nolan's life. Once celebrated as a goddess of early Hollywood, she was now a shadow of her former self. She had endured prison, battled addiction, changed her name and identity so many times that even those who knew her struggled to keep up. Above all, she had been mistreated and exploited by some of Hollywood's most powerful and dangerous men. Hall reflected on her sorrow, comparing her to a fragile vessel adrift without guidance, a tragic figure born with angelic beauty, but thrust into the hands of predators. Welcome to the haunting story of Mary Nolan. Mary Nolan was born Mariam Imogene Robertson on December 18, 1902, in Kentucky, as the youngest of 5 children in a struggling family. She was the youngest of 5 children in a struggling family. Her mother, Viola Pittman Robertson, passed away when Mary was just 3 years old, leaving her frail father, Africanus Gabriel Robertson, to care for the family. With 3 young children still at home, he found it impossible to manage, and Mary's life was uprooted. She was sent to a Catholic orphanage in St. Joseph, Missouri. It was there that she earned the nickname Bubbles. In 1912, tragedy struck again. The orphanage informed Mary that she would briefly return to Kentucky to visit her eldest sister, Myrtle McDaniels, who, along with her infant son, was gravely ill. Sadly, Myrtle passed away from tetanus on June 2, and her baby died 2 weeks later. After a short stay with her grandmother, who was unable to care for her, Mary returned to the orphanage, where she remained until she was 13. At that point, Mary's life took another turn. She left for New York City to join her sister Mabel, who had become an actress and married actor Charles Rondeau. Mabel introduced Mary to the world of theater, and in 1915, the young girl arrived in New York with nothing to her name. Her stunning looks, blonde hair, and striking blue eyes quickly drew attention. Not long after her arrival, she met Arthur William Brown, a well-known magazine illustrator. Soon, Mary was posing for Brown and living at the Artists and Models Club. Mary's beauty and charm helped her rise quickly in the modeling world. She worked with some of the most famous illustrators of the time, including James Montgomery Flagg, Norman Rockwell, and Charles Dana Gibson. By 1922, she began transitioning to the stage. That August, she made her debut in the musical comedy Daffy Dill at the Apollo Theater, which ran for 2 months. Soon after, she joined the chorus of another musical, Lady Butterfly. This was just the beginning of what seemed like a promising career, but Mary's life would soon take a darker turn. During her time in Daffy Dill, Mary crossed paths with Frank Tinney, the show's 44-year-old leading man. One rainy night after a performance, Mary was trying to flag down a taxi when Tinney, already in one, stopped and offered her a lift. She ended up inviting him to her place, and he spent the night. Tinney, a married man with a young son from his wife, former singer and dancer Edna Davenport, was known for his heavy drinking. He was born in Philadelphia as the 3rd child of Hugh Francis and Mary, both of Irish-American heritage. Tinney dabbled in performances with his brother at local events and had a brief stint on a vaudeville show as a child. Despite his parents' hopes for him to enter the medical field, Tinney pursued various menial jobs, including chief lifeguard at Atlantic City, fire engine driver, and undertaker's assistant, the latter of which, curiously enough, led him to a minstrel show. By 1907, Tinney had made his mark in vaudeville across the U.S. and Canada, debuting in New York in 1910 and securing roles in productions led by Gertrude Hoffman and Eva Tanguay. This success brought him to the Schubert Brothers Review of Reviews at the Winter Garden Theater and numerous Broadway shows throughout his career. Mary was completely smitten with Tinney, feeling valued and loved for the first time. However, the discovery of Mrs. Tinney rocked her world. This led her to confront Frank about the wife he had failed to mention. She was deeply enamored, as was Tinney, or at least so he said. He moved her into an apartment on West 72nd Street, lavishing her with gifts, but also inflicting serious physical and emotional harm on her. Tinny was a sadist with a violent, drunken temper. Mary was young and inexperienced, but had grown up tough and would challenge Tinny to hit her again, trying to hide her fear. Meanwhile, Mary, now known as Imogene Bubbles Wilson, made her debut in the Ziegfeld Follies, appearing in the 1923 show alongside Eddie Cantor, Fanny Brice, and Ann Pennington. Mary quickly rose to fame as a beloved Ziegfeld girl, making such an impression that by 1922, New York Daily News columnist Mark Hellinger remarked, "Only two people in America could gather every New York reporter at the docks for their departure. One is the president, the other is Imogene Bubbles Wilson." However, her time in the 1924 Ziegfeld Follies was tumultuous. In May, after a typical argument, Mary attempted to inflict lethal damage upon herself. A few days afterward, she summoned Hellinger to her apartment to share her story directly. But that evening, Frank Tinny arrived unexpectedly and decided to take a nap at Mary's place. When Hellinger showed up around 9:30 p.m., Tinny awoke and flew into a rage, assuming Hellinger was Mary's lover, and attacked them both. At this point, he tried to fight Hellinger. After the reporter departed, Tinny violently assaulted Mary. He was arrested the following day, but when questioned about the charges, he dismissed the whole event, explaining it was something Mary wouldn't pursue. He painted her as a hysterical actress making a drama out of the situation. The story took a dramatic turn as multiple perspectives came to light. Tinny's wife, when asked for her opinion, expressed pity for Mary, describing her as a naive young woman who believed everything Frank told her. She added that Mary had her sympathy and that she felt sorry for her. The following day, Mary, accompanied by her sister Mabel and her maid, appeared in court, determined to pursue charges. They filed a $100,000 lawsuit against Tinny. However, the ordeal proved overwhelming for Mary, as she fainted after leaving the courtroom and had to rest until the crowd dispersed. A week later, Mary testified about enduring relentless abuse and admitted to several attempts to take her own life. She explained that she had reached a breaking point, saying she was tired of the physical violence inflicted by Tinny. Her maid, Carrie Snee, corroborated her claims and recalled Mary pleading with her not to let Tinny harm her further. Despite Tinny's defense dismissing the case as a mere publicity stunt, Judge Max Line refused to throw it out. However, the grand jury ultimately decided not to indict Tinny based on Mary's testimony. Tinny later reflected on the ordeal with an air of flippancy, remarking that it was the first time he succeeded without eliciting laughter. He continued to trivialize the situation, suggesting it was all for publicity and making callous remarks about how the media sensationalizes abuse. After the grand jury's decision, Tinny planned to escape the fallout by heading to England to revive his career in vaudeville. He booked passage on Columbus, set to depart in early August 1924. Yet just 2 days before his departure, Tinny and Mary Nolan were spotted together outside a Broadway theater in the early hours. When a photographer attempted to capture the moment, Tinny destroyed the camera, prompting the photographer to file an assault lawsuit. To avoid further scrutiny, Tinny boarded Columbus a day earlier than planned. However, as he prepared to leave, he was served with legal papers from his wife, Edna Davenport, who had initiated separation proceedings after his public outing with Nolan. On top of that, he received additional legal documents from the photographer. Back at the Tinny family home in Long Island, Edna remained tight-lipped, confirming only that legal action was underway. Meanwhile, Tinny disclosed that he had secured a $10,000 payout from Sam H. Harris to terminate his Music Box Review contract. He planned to start fresh in London, where he had a lucrative deal lined up, hoping to leave behind the mounting scandals and lawsuits. Although Edna had previously stood by Tinny during his trial, his secret reunion with Nolan seemed to be the final straw. As Tinny prepared to sail, Nolan arrived to say goodbye. The pair retreated to his cabin, avoiding the press. When the ship's final departure call came, Nolan refused to leave and had to be forcibly removed from the gangplank. Tearfully, she admitted to reporters that Tinney was her entire world, declaring her love for him without hesitation. This public display of devotion proved costly for Nolan, as Florence Ziegfeld, determined to protect his troops' reputation, fired her that same day. Ziegfeld explained that Nolan had broken her promise to sever ties with Tinney, and her actions were jeopardizing the morale of the company. With her career in shambles, Nolan seemed determined to follow Tinney to Europe. By early September, she had obtained a passport and announced plans to visit several European countries, including destinations that coincidentally matched Tinney's itinerary. She admitted she was deeply unhappy and wanted to escape, even hinting that she might never return. By September 20, 1924, Nolan was on her way to Europe, leaving behind a trail of scandal and heartbreak. Mary's European adventure kicked off in London, where she made the mistake of giving Tinney another chance. By December, however, his worsening alcoholism and violent behavior had pushed her to her breaking point. Covered in bruises and finally seeing Tinney for who he truly was, a broken man unworthy of her love, Mary decided to leave. Her escape came in the form of an acting opportunity in German cinema, leading her to Berlin and away from Tinney for good. When Tinney returned to New York in 1925, he found his life in shambles. His friends had drifted away, his audience had lost interest, and his attempts to reconcile with Mary were futile. By March 1926, his health began to deteriorate after a fall left him with broken ribs, followed by a nervous breakdown. His career revival efforts failed, and by 1930, he had moved back to Philadelphia to live with his father, his once bright career reduced to a faded memory. Tinney passed away on November 28, 1940, at a veterans' hospital in Long Island due to a lung condition. Despite earning $1,500 a week at his peak, he died penniless, his fortune drained by divorce settlements, legal fees, and medical expenses. A former captain in the World War I Army Quartermaster Corps, he was buried with military honors in Holy Cross Cemetery, Pennsylvania, under the name Imagine Robertson. Meanwhile, Mary's career in Germany flourished. She made her film debut with UFA in Die Feuer Tänzerin, captivating audiences and securing a lucrative contract that paid her $1,500 weekly. She became a celebrated figure in the glamorous Weimar era of German cinema, finally earning recognition for her talent rather than her troubled past. Known for her daring, eye-catching fashion, Mary appeared in numerous German films throughout 1924 and 1925. Her success caught Hollywood's attention, and soon, offers began pouring in from American studios. While cautious about returning to the U.S., she couldn't resist Joseph Schenk's proposal. By January 1927, Mary was on her way back to New York, ready to rebuild her career. What if she had stayed in the free-spirited world of Weimar Germany? That vibrant era had only 6 years left before its collapse. But Mary's return to the U.S. wasn't just about reviving her career, it was also a financial necessity. Her time in Berlin had also included surgery, which she blamed on injuries caused by Tinney. Toward the end of her stay in Germany, she was accompanied by a nurse, rumored to be more of a shield against creditors than a caregiver. However, Mary's Hollywood comeback was rocky from the start. News of her return sparked backlash from women's organizations, and Will Hayes, Hollywood's moral watchdog, doubted her suitability for the industry. Despite the controversy, she settled into a home on Beechwood Drive in the Hollywood Hills and waited for United Artists to make their move. United Artists relented, but suggested that her birth name, Imogene Wilson, wasn't marketable. They proposed she adopt the more refined name Mary Nolan to reflect a fresh start. She agreed, later admitting that the name change was an attempt to erase her tarnished past. Reflecting on this, Mary once remarked that the studio had given her a new identity, a clean slate, and a chance to leave her old life behind. Mary began her Hollywood journey with a small role in Topsy and Eva in 1927, starring the Duncan sisters, Rosetta and Vivian. Shortly after, she landed a part as Neela's love interest in Sorrel and Son, which featured an impressive cast, including H.B. Warner, Anna Q. Nilsson, Carmel Myers, Lionel Belmore, Alice Joyce, and Louis Wolheim. The production shifted to England in July 1927 to wrap up filming, but by mid-August, Mary was back in Hollywood, where she signed a leading role contract with Universal. While settling into her new life in the film capital, she became involved in another turbulent romance, this time with Eddie Mannix, an MGM executive she met at the Coconut Grove. Mannix, infamous as Hollywood's so-called fixer, had a reputation for handling the industry's dirtiest scandals, often with the help of mob connections. Over the years, he would be linked to several controversies, including Joan Crawford's questionable film and the mysterious death of George Reeves. Despite his marriage, Mannix's treatment of Mary was far from noble. His behavior revealed a cruel and sadistic side. Amidst her personal struggles, Mary threw herself into her work. In her first Universal film, Good Morning Judge, she played a wealthy social worker dedicated to helping former offenders. Critics praised her performance, with Variety noting her sincerity and skill, even highlighting her natural ease in front of the camera. Her next film, Foreign Legion, brought further acclaim, with reviewers commending her portrayal of a selfish gold digger. They remarked on her ability to balance beauty with a convincing performance, predicting a bright future for her in Hollywood. In 1928, Mary took on the role of Maisie in West of Zanzibar, starring Lon Chaney as Flint, a vengeful former vaudeville performer confined to a wheelchair. The dark and twisted plot revealed Maisie to be Flint's daughter, leading to a dramatic and emotional conclusion. Mary's performance was widely praised, with critics lauding her ability to convey both sensuality and innocence. Film FX journalist Brett Wood noted the depth of sorrow in her eyes, a reflection of her own troubled life, which added a haunting authenticity to her portrayal. This role would become one of her most memorable in Hollywood. By 1930, Mary's career appeared to be on an upward trajectory. She starred alongside John Gilbert in his final silent film, Desert Nights, where her performance earned positive reviews. Variety even acknowledged her growth as an actress. Mary's relationship with Eddie Mannix turned violent, much like her earlier romance with Frank Tinney. Mannix's abuse left her with severe injuries, requiring multiple surgeries and a long recovery in a Los Angeles hospital. During this time, she became dependent on painkillers, marking the beginning of her struggle with drug addiction. The physical and emotional toll of the abuse derailed her career, and her performances at Universal began to suffer as her dependency deepened. In Shanghai Lady, she played a prostitute determined to turn her life around after a long stint in an opium den. In Young Desire, she took on the role of a carnival dancer who ends her life, convinced she's unworthy of her young, innocent lover, portrayed by William Janney. Despite Janney's deep roots in theater, he admitted years later that he'd never encountered anyone as complicated as Mary. Reflecting on their time together in 1991, he spoke bluntly about her. She struggled with substance abuse and was rumored to have numerous health issues. He confessed that their love scenes left him uneasy, and he would rush to gargle with Listerine afterward, fearing he might catch something. By the time Mary worked with Janney, her addiction had taken a firm hold on her life. She later revealed that a nurse accompanied her constantly, administering injections to manage her severe pain during filming. Although a stunt double handled the dangerous parts, Mary insisted on doing the close-up herself. The short fall into a safety net aggravated her injuries, leaving her in agony. She recalled collapsing after the scene, needing immediate relief from her nurse. At the time, she had no idea her doctors had already deemed her incurable, quietly indulging her wishes to ease her suffering. Despite her deteriorating health, Mary felt compelled to keep working while her talent was still in demand. But her struggles didn't go unnoticed. In July 1930, she found herself embroiled in a narcotics investigation after two nurses disclosed her heavy drug use, noting the needle marks on her arms. However, when investigators examined her during a hospital stay for severe sunburn, they claimed not to find any evidence of drug use. Her fiery temperament didn't help matters. While working at Universal, she clashed with director Ernst Lemmel during the production of What Men Want. Mary was upset about being excluded from certain close-ups, accusing the director of favoring other actors. One day, she arrived on set, only to find herself locked out. She was swiftly replaced by Pauline Stark. Furious, Mary vowed never to work with the studio again, even if it meant sacrificing her career. She threatened to sue, claiming the studio had damaged her reputation, but Carl Laemmle challenged her to follow through. The feud was eventually settled in early 1931 when Universal bought out the remainder of her contract. By then, however, Mary's reputation in Hollywood was in tatters. Photoplay columnist Cal York summed up the fallout. Noting Mary's fiery personality had left Universal in disarray, he remarked that she had caused more trouble than 100 other actresses combined, sparring with everyone from the studio head to the crew. Her relentless demands and outbursts had made her a pariah in the industry, and her once bright career was now overshadowed by controversy and scandal. After this series of setbacks, Mary found herself relegated to minor roles with lesser-known studios, and her life seemed to spiral further out of control. In early 1931, she caught the attention of the police after a rug mysteriously disappeared from a property she had rented from director Lambert Hillier. The rug later turned up at a doctor's office, where the owner claimed Mary had offered it as partial payment for medical services. Mary surprised everyone by marrying millionaire broker Wallace T. McCary in March 1931. She even announced plans for a movie about racketeering and a vaudeville tour with her new husband. But just a week before their wedding, McKee's fortune took a massive hit, losing over $3 million in a stock market downturn. The couple scraped together the last $9,000 of his wealth to open a dress shop in Beverly Hills, hoping for a fresh start. By August, Mary filed for bankruptcy, revealing she had $3,000 in assets against a staggering $93,000 in debt. That same month, a chance encounter with two police officers on a Beverly Hills street corner led to her being hauled into court over accusations of unpaid wages to 5 employees, including her cook and chauffeur. She managed to post bail, but the dress shop's employees soon filed wage complaints with the State Labor Commission. Mary ignored court summons, resulting in multiple arrest warrants. By March 1932, both she and her husband were convicted of 17 labor law violations, earning Mary a $1,300 fine and a 30-day jail sentence. Despite her legal troubles, fan clubs across the country rallied to her defense, proving she still had a loyal following, even if Hollywood and the authorities had turned their backs on her. Hoping for a fresh start, Mary moved to New York and announced in June that she planned to divorce McCary. She reportedly told the Los Angeles Times that while she was fond of him, their marriage had been a mistake. She admitted they had rushed into it like children, even after his financial ruin, thinking love would be enough. Mary's final film appearance came in 1933 with File 113 for Allied Pictures. Afterward, she relocated to New York permanently. By November 1934, her name was back in the headlines when police launched a 5-state search for her over a missing $2,000 belonging to show business promoter Louis Kesman. Kesman claimed the money vanished after he gave Mary a ride home from a tavern. Although she was arrested, the charges were quickly dropped after a telegram cleared her in court. In 1935, Mary filed a $500,000 lawsuit against Eddie Manx, accusing him of assault and sabotaging her career. That same year, she traveled to London to perform at the Piccadilly Theatre, attempting to revive her career overseas. Back in the U.S., her opportunities dwindled to singing in small roadhouses and clubs. By March 1936, she was performing at the Queen's Terrace Cafe in Lancaster, Ohio. It was during a performance at a New York nightclub that Mary crossed paths again with William Janney, her former co-star from Young Desire. From the stage, she introduced him to the audience as her leading man. However, Janney was heartbroken to see her drinking and felt something was deeply wrong despite her assuring him that everything was fine. In May 1937, Mary faced the consequences of an old debt. She was jailed over an unpaid $400 bill from 5 years prior. Her release came after a debt collector's agent agreed to give her more time to settle the amount. Following her release, she was admitted to the psychiatric ward at Bellevue Hospital, looking frail and worn. She admitted that the arrest and brief imprisonment had left her under severe emotional strain, but she expressed hope, saying she was slowly regaining her strength and believed she would soon recover fully. Yet, the road to recovery was long. That same year, she received both medical and psychiatric treatment at the Brunswick home in Amityville, New York. By October, she suffered another setback when an emergency brought her back to Bellevue Hospital due to an overdose of sedatives. After spending a year recovering in a New York sanatorium, Mary returned to Hollywood, seeking refuge with her sister Mabel. She hoped to revive her career, but the industry had moved on, and her former allure no longer opened doors for her. Her story resurfaced in 1941, gaining public interest once again. She sold her life story to the American Weekly. There was talk of writing her memoirs, or even adapting her life into a film, but those plans never materialized. By early 1948, Mary's health had severely declined. She was admitted to Cedars of Lebanon Hospital for malnutrition, weighing just 80 pounds, and also received treatment for a gallbladder condition. Later, she moved into a modest room in a bungalow court at 1504 South Mansfield Avenue. Her most cherished possession was an antique grand piano that had once belonged to Rudolph Valentino. The piano dominated the small space, but it held deep sentimental value for Mary. According to her sister Mabel, Mary cherished the piano and kept a photo of Valentino on its music rack, finding comfort in its connection to her own past glory. By the fall of 1948, Mary sensed her life was nearing its end. She confided in author Jack Preston and began working with him on her memoirs. Over the next 2 months, they collaborated on documenting her story. On the night of October 30th, Edward Gallagher, a fellow resident, found Mary in distress and alerted her sister, who called her doctor. Early on October 31, 1948, Gallagher discovered her unresponsive and moved her to another bed. By that evening, her doctor confirmed that Mary had passed away in the early hours of the morning. She was only 46 years old. The circumstances surrounding her death were initially unclear. Investigators discovered an empty pill bottle alongside a note. Later, an autopsy confirmed that she had succumbed to an overdose of seconal, a barbiturate. The note found with the bottle contained lines from A Child's Prayer by William Holly Smith. The poem, which speaks of divine care and protection through the night, included these words: "When it gets dark, the birds and flowers shut up their eyes and say good night, and God who loves them counts the hours and keeps them safe till it gets light. Dear Father, count the hours tonight, when I'm asleep and cannot see, and in the morning may the light shine for the birds, the flowers, and me." On the back of the note, written in Mary's handwriting, was a haunting comment. She had written, "If this were only true." And that wraps up this chapter. It's a world where dreams often glitter, but nightmares can just as easily take hold. Sadly, Mary Nolan's story was one of heartbreak and tragedy. Until next time,